All right, I need to follow up on a previous video I did about a dumbass Trump supporter. Are there any other kinds of Trump supporters? No. A dumbass Trump supporter who voted for Trump, and then his wife, who is not an American citizen, got arrested and deported on the way back from their honeymoon. Now, if you didn't see my original video about this, I highly encourage you to go back and watch it, then come back and watch this one. I've linked that video in the description below, so please watch that. Now, for those of you who did watch it, let me just refresh your memory. This is a guy named Bradley Bartell. His wife, Camila Munoz, is from Peru, and she was not legally in this country, and she got married to good old Brad, and then, like the dumbasses that they are, they got on a plane. You know, they do a lot of checking of people when they go to the airport and get on planes. Now, I know they went to Puerto Rico for their honeymoon. Puerto Rico is not going to another country, so maybe they thought they were safe in that way. You know, Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory. By the way, I hadn't heard about it mentioned lately, but now I'm talking about Puerto Rico. Donald Trump a couple of weeks ago said he wants to get rid of Puerto Rico. Do you remember this? That came and went. I haven't heard about that anymore. Anyway, so yeah, they go to Puerto Rico. They come back, and they are stopped at the airport. And, you know, they ask her about her legal status. Because, you know, being from Peru, she's Hispanic. She has dark skin. She looks Hispanic. And in the new Trump regime, that makes you a potential enemy of the state. You're not allowed to be brown. You're not allowed to be Hispanic. And if you are, you better damn well have your papers in order. If not, you're in deep shit. Well, guess what? She didn't have her papers in order. Let's see what her situation was. She entered the U.S. on a work-study visa in 2019 and got stuck in the country when the COVID pandemic hit. Shortly after, her visa expired, but she kept working. Uh-oh. That's not good. And while she was working, her relationship with good old Brad developed. So she stayed here because she was in love. But she was not here legally. You know, if you come in here to this country on a visa and it expires, you are no longer in the country legally. Just because you came here legally doesn't mean you still are here legally once that visa expires. That's a big problem. Now, in the past, it probably wouldn't have been that big of a deal, but this is the new fascist Trump regime that your husband voted for. So, you're in deep shit. Deep, deep shit. And so there's two updates to this story. The first is that Brad, with his wife in detention, you know, she's still there. She's still in detention, though they're not exactly sure where she's being held because, again, this is the new fascist Trump regime. Anyway, she's still in custody. And so what did good old Brad do? Well, he started a GoFundMe page because, of course, he did. And here it is. Here is a picture of that loving couple. Free Camilla. Help with legal and bond support. So here he is. He's got a goal of $3,000. He's raised $921 from 40 donations. Not exactly sure how long this has been up. Here's what he writes. My story was posted in USA Today. My wife was detained at the end of our belated honeymoon while we were returning through the airport. This money will be used for legal support and the bond money for my wife. Any and all support is deeply appreciated. On top of the lawyer's fees, I have been informed that the bond could run upwards of $10,000. Please do not put yourself out to support us in this matter. But if you have the means and would like to help, it would be greatly appreciated. Oh, Brad. Where to begin with Brad here? I noticed that Brad did not put in this GoFundMe plea that he voted for the guy who deported his wife. I really think that that's relevant information. Okay, because the American people, by and large, are very generous. But they're less generous when they discover that people got themselves in trouble because of their own stupidity. Especially when they had fair warning. And boy, did Brad have warning. That what they were doing is stupid and may negatively affect you. Right? So I think that that might have had something to do with the fact that Brad did not put that information in his description. It might impact how much money he's able to raise. Although he's not really raising all that much money, especially for a guy whose story and that of his wife was in USA Today. And still he can't seem to capitalize off of that and even reach $1,000. And by the way, Brad, your wife's bond, you have been informed, could be upwards of $10,000. First of all, what do you mean upwards of? Do you not know what the bond is yet? Well, maybe you don't, because she hasn't even gotten in front of a judge, right? Because this is the new Trump regime. You don't get to see a judge. If you get to see a judge, it's only by the Orange God King's good graces that you're allowed to see a judge. So she might never be given a bond. So this money that you may raise, you might never get her out, no matter how much you raise, because she might never get in front of a judge and have a bond set. So who knows? And by the way, if you do get in front of a judge and get a bond, I don't know that your $3,000 goal is going to be enough. So you got the bond, $10,000 bond. You'll have to pay some percentage of that if you can get a bondsman. But then you have these lawyers' fees. Now, unless you got a really shitty lawyer, lawyers are pretty pricey. And I just think $3,000, you're going to be a little light, Brad. Just saying. And by the way, lawyers are not miracle workers. I know people, a lot of people think, trust me, I've been a lawyer for 25 years. I've represented a lot of people. And especially in the criminal justice system, a lot of people think that if they hire a lawyer, they're getting themselves off. Like, just the fact that they've hired a lawyer means that lawyer is going to be able to get him out. Now, it doesn't work that way. Now, your problem is that you don't have a case. That's really your problem and your wife's problem. She doesn't have a legal leg to stand on. She's here illegally. And under our laws, the Trump regime can deport her. And going in front of a judge, the judge is just going to look into the facts of the case and look at the law. And if the law supports deportation, she will be deported. The judge isn't going to care about your sob story. It's not going to matter that you were on your honeymoon or on your way back from your honeymoon when she got arrested. It's not going to matter that I came here legally initially and then my visa expired and I never renewed it. And I met Brad and I fell in love. None of that matters. None of those facts are relevant. The only thing that's relevant in a deportation hearing is whether or not you're in this country legally. If you are not, then your Peruvian ass gets deported. And based on what you're telling the USA Today and then here in Newsweek, what you're telling them is that you don't have a legal leg to stand on. She's not here legally. Your lawyer's not a miracle worker. He's also probably not a very good lawyer anyway, since really, I doubt he's charging all that much if all you're looking for is $3,000. And judging by the looks of you there, Bradley, I doubt you have too much money, especially since you just came back from your honeymoon. You're probably broke as shit. So I'm just saying it's not looking good for you. That's all I'm saying. And one more thing. This guy says he doesn't regret his vote. Did I mention that? Or you probably figured out. Most of these MAGA cultists will never admit that they made a mistake or regret their vote. So here's what he said to Newsweek. I don't regret the vote. It's all been a nightmare, really. Taking things as they come and moving forward. We have an attorney. The system for getting people through seems to be very inefficient. So it's taking longer than it should. And then there was something else. Maybe there's another article here. I can't find it. I got little bits and pieces of things he said over here in this article and this article. I'm not going to look for it. Basically, he said also that it's not Trump's fault. The system is a mess, but it's not Trump's fault. But now Trump has an opportunity to fix it, and he hopes that Trump hears about his story, gets his wife out, and then fixes this system. Boy, is this one stupid son of a bitch. Donald Trump's not going to let your wife out because, as I said, she's brown. She's brown. Doesn't matter that she married Brad. And everybody loves Brad. And I'm sure Trump loves you. I'm sure you're on a list somewhere of Trump's favorite people and supporters. And we know that he treats his supporters real well, right? But yeah, so her being brown, not going to help. And the fact that you're making excuses for this guy, you're never going to wake up, are you, Brad? You should be mad. You should be mad that we live in this fascist regime. But you should be more mad at the fact that your dumbass empowered this fascist regime. Usually, in the before times, before this fascist dictator that you empowered came to office, something like this probably would have been worked out. A lawyer could have talked to some people on your behalf and gotten this straightened out. Oh, she was here originally on a student visa, and she just overstayed. She got wrapped up with work. She didn't realize she needed to renew it. She married Brad. Come on, that's got to count for something. And in the end, she almost certainly would not have been deported. But this is the new regime. So your dumbass voted for this. You should regret your vote. I know you said you don't. But either that's because you're so full on into the cult. By the way, I'm also shocked here. Brad, why didn't you wear your MAGA hat in this picture that you posted on your GoFundMe? I'm sure you have lots of pictures in a MAGA hat. Could it be that you are trying to deceive people by not telling them and not putting a picture of yourself in your MAGA hat? Trying to deceive people? I think you should tell people the truth, Brad. Tell them you voted for this guy. Tell them what happened. Tell them I voted for this guy and now my wife got deported. But you're not going to do that, are you, Brad? Because then people won't give you money. People will say, screw you, Brad. You voted for this. Anyway, so he's not going to ever admit that he made a mistake because he's probably too full on into the cult. He'll never blame Trump for anything. It's always somebody else's fault. Maybe the next article I read about good old Brad is he'll blame Biden somehow for his wife being deported. But there's that. There's also the fact that these MAGA lunatics, even if they come to regret their vote, most of them, now some of them actually apologize, actually admit their error, but most of them will never do that. And the reason is because they can't ever admit that they were wrong. Because it'll do a couple of things. It will admit that their whole identity, everything about them was wrong. Because voting for Trump, their support of Trump is not just about voting for a politician. Lots of people vote for politicians, then the politician breaks their promise and they're like, screw that guy, I'm not voting for him again. That's what normal people who vote for politicians do. You vote for a politician, if they let you down, you get angry, you might not support them again. Not these Trump cultists. This isn't about politics for these people. It's about identity. It's a cult. It's a personality cult. It's identity. Their personal identities are wrapped up in supporting Donald Trump. And to admit that they were wrong about Trump is to admit something about themselves that they will never admit. That they were conned. Everything that they've been saying for the last 10 years in defending this guy was wrong. They were wrong. They were stupid. They were conned. They can't admit that about themselves. And so most of these people never, ever will. Even those of them who I guess come back to some degree of sanity, enough to admit that they made a mistake and that they were conned. They may admit it to themselves, but so many of them will never admit it publicly because they're in a cult. And the cult, does not handle well people who wake up and try to leave the cult or talk against the cult leader in any way. And that's been conditioned over many years. You know, Brad has been conditioned over many years. And he knows that he can't step out of line. He can't blame the cult leader in any way. So Brad is a dumbass. He voted for a fascist. He voted for a racist who hates brown people. Brad was marrying a brown person. Too stupid to put all that together and figure out, maybe I shouldn't support this guy. No, Brad's not smart enough to do that. And so now Brad is paying the price. He won't admit that he had anything to do with it. He won't admit that Donald Trump is responsible for this. But you and I know better. And maybe, deep down, Brad knows better too. But Brad will never admit it, because Brad's in a cult.